our Hayden Fry stories, memorabilia, anything you can think of Hayden. And these are guys that were probably, including me, a little bit closer to Hayden than the sports writers were, because they saw him when he was happy, when he was mad, and when he was in between, and when he was a little bit of everything. But I'm actually on this panel too, but I'll just be standing here moderating. Dale Arens, Dale, stand up there so they know who you are. He's currently the Trademark and Licensing Director at the University of Iowa Athletics Hall of Fame and Museum Director at the University of Iowa. And previously, he was the Director of the Athletic Department Merchandising Program. Dale has over 35 years of experience with the Hawkeyes. And let me tell you right now, Dale's connection, probably nobody was closer to Hayden in, let's say, the last 15 years of his life here at the university than Dale was. He was in constant contact with Hayden and Shirley and Hayden's boys, and Dale was pretty much in charge of always getting Hayden back here to FRYfest as much as possible. So he was very close with Hayden. He spent time with Hayden at his house in Nevada, and very close with the Fry family. And in fact, even though Hayden is no longer with us, he's still close with some of the Fry family. Don Patterson was an assistant coach. Donnie, stand up. He's the one that used to look like Burt Reynolds on the staff, and still does a little bit. Maybe, is Burt dead? He passed away. No, you look better than Burt now then. That's for sure. He was an assistant coach to Hayden from 1978 to 1998 when Hayden finished up his coaching career, and he spent more time coaching with Hayden than any other assistant coach ever, Don Patterson. And of course, Marv Cook is taking time off this year from his coaching duties and at Regina. From 1985 to 88, Marv Cook was a standout tight end for the Hawkeyes on the Hayden Fry teams, including being a consensus All-American his senior season. He went on to an All-Pro career in the NFL, playing for the Patriots, Bears, and Rams. Since 2007, he's coached the Iowa City Regina High School football team, where his teams won 7 straight state titles from 2010 to 2016. Great job, Marv Cook. Okay, we're going to talk about Hayden, and we're just going to go around. The previous panel that we had, we told a lot of Hayden stories on how he used to get the media worked up and how he did that. He'd go into a game using his psychology, a game that was easy to win, at least it appeared to be on the schedule. He would go into the media with a burn. He'd be mad, you know, so that's his way of taking the pressure off the players. When we were playing a school like Michigan or Ohio State, he'd go in all giddy and he'd be all happy, and that's the way he was. But Dale, I'm going to get to you last probably, but Marv, we got the representative of a player, a coach, and a close friend of Hayden. So give us just your feelings, your thoughts on Hayden Fry as a player, and you've been around him even after your career was over for a long time. Just go ahead and talk about what you think about Hayden Fry.
Yeah, so, and I apologize if people have heard this, but I was probably in 6th grade, maybe 5th, 6th grade, and I was working at my grandma's house, and we were listening to, it was probably 8th grade, 9th grade, and we were listening to the radio and listening to an Iowa football game on a Saturday afternoon, and Iowa was playing Nebraska, and Iowa had a true freshman named Larry Station, and they weren't sure if he was going to play. He was an Omaha kid, and we're listening to the game, and it wasn't going very well for the Hawks, to be honest with you. It was probably that Iowa was probably down 40, 50 points at the time, and Larry Station got in, and they talked about they took his red shirt off and he was going to play in the game, and he ended up getting a tackle for loss against the starting quarterback, and Zabel was going crazy on the radio. And like I said, Iowa was down, I think, 45 points at the time, and it was at that moment that I knew I wanted to be a Hawkeye. I knew I wanted to play for Iowa because of that excitement for the sheer joy of the game, the sheer joy of someone playing the game and representing the university. And so my first experience with Hayden, Coach Fry, was my mom was a supervising nurse at Mercy Hospital, and she was in charge of pediatrics. And when I was a senior and they started to think about recruiting me, Coach Fry came over to visit her at the hospital at Mercy here in Iowa City. And my mom, being my mom, wasn't going to waste a good moment, so she, of course, took him around and introduced her to all the doctors and a few of the patients, and really made a difference on that ward, as Coach Fry always had a tendency to do. But I can honestly tell you that it was at that moment on that there was no place that my mother was ever going to let me go besides the University of Iowa. Coach Fry was the most incredible human being, the greatest salesman, the greatest motivator, and I'll get into some of the motivational stuff as well. But at that moment I knew, and my mom knew, that I was going to be playing football at the University of Iowa. So that's my first memory of Coach Fry.
Donnie, you coached with him. You were, I think, what, a grad assistant at first? But you were a coach for, I guess, about 20 years with him.
Yep, 21 years
You came
total.
from Texas, right, with him?
Right, 1 year at North Texas, and then all 20 years here.
So tell us, some of your fondest memories right off the bat, and then we'll get into deeper stuff as we go on.
Just for a minute, I'd like to brag on Marv and talk about a specific meeting we had in the summer before Marv reported in August. We're sitting in the conference room, and Coach Fry says, "Where's Marv Cook going to start off playing?" And Bill, is the maybe quarterback be his best spot? And Bill said, "Coach, I don't think Marv projects that well at quarterback. That's not going to work very well." He turned to Bernie Wyatt and said, "Bernie, how about defensive end? I know Marv's a really good defensive player." And Bernie seemed to think he could get better defensive ends from back east, I think. Not too many come from West Branch. And the smartest decision I ever made, I said, "Well, Coach, I'll take him as a tight end." Because here's what I knew about Marv. Somehow, he not only ran 400 meters, but he ran 400 meters and jumped over hurdles in the process. I'm thinking, how can a guy that's that big, maybe you were 210 at the time, maybe at the most, but still, a 210-pound, 400-meter hurdler at the state meet, if I'm not mistaken, that's hard to do. That tells you something about the guy that's doing it. And I think it's true. I think Marv delighted in beating up on Bernie's defensive ends from that point forward. That's pretty much how it happened. But the best tight end I ever had, I didn't even know he was going to be a tight end for sure until that meeting in maybe June or July, I guess. True story.
And you could probably be an offensive lineman now.
I'm working on it.
Okay. Dale, you knew Coach Fry more from the, how do I say this, not necessarily, you did know him as a coach, but as a friend.
Yeah, no, truth be told, well, I started at the university, 35 years ago. Phil, you beat me at that, but that was the pinnacle at that time. Coming off the '86 Rose Bowl, I thought I had died and gone to heaven to work for the university. And I didn't really interact with Hayden. I mean, the football offices were removed. We all had our locations. So certainly it was really exciting to be working here, but I would describe Hayden as gubernatorial. I mean, he was bigger than life. If you saw him in the hallway, I didn't feel like I was worthy to talk to him. I really got to know Hayden when he retired, basically. From that time on is where we developed a relationship, and it wasn't a work relationship. There was so many characteristics that I saw in him that were reflective of his generation. He was more of a father figure. Marv and I have a story before that. I had an interaction with Hayden before he retired, which actually involves Marv. I'm from Northwest Iowa, Lamar's, Wells Blue Bunny, and there was a group up there that was trying to fundraise to make some money to add to their golf course. And so I helped make that connection, being here in Iowa City, to Hayden's people talking to my people. And Marv and I flew on that was when you graduated, you and Chuck, I don't know if Chuck's out there, Chuck Hartlieb. And I remember getting on the plane in the Iowa City airport, small private jet that Wells Blue Bunny flew down. Marv, you were sitting next to me, and Hayden was right across from me. Chuck was across from Marv. And I thought, well, here I am sitting. I can't believe I'm on a private jet sitting next to Coach Fry. I got to say something to him. So I said, hey, Coach Fry, wow, I can't believe that President Rawlings is talking about making freshmen ineligible. Bad idea. Hayden started grousing about, and on he went about stretch on the hill. Remember that? That's what's Hayden's pet name for President Rawlings. And the pilot leans back and says, you guys strapped in? We're gonna go. And boy, did we go. And Hayden said, the last thing that he said for a long time then was, Marv, that plane gets up and goes like you chasing after the girls. And we took off into the air. And this is what I remember most about this was Chuck. We're not in the air 5 minutes, and Chuck kind of unbuckles his seatbelt and leans over to Hayden, and Hayden's got his shades on, and I don't know what he's doing. He's got his face that close to Hayden, and then he slides back in the seat, buckles up. He says he's sleeping. Dale, do me a favor. Do not bring up that topic. Remember that? Yeah, so that was my first interaction with Hayden, but really didn't get to know him until he retired. And it's been just a friendship is what I would describe it as.
I think didn't he call President Rawlings High Pockets?
That's right. That's what
He called him High Pockets, you know.
And by the way, Phil, I had this idea. I called and spoke to Hayden's son, Kelly, who I'm really close with, just a little bit ago. And I said, Kelly, they're sticking a microphone in front of me. We're going to be talking about your dad. And is there anything that you'd like to share? And I said, well, first of all, I said, do you know what today is? He says, are you crazy? Of course we know what today is. We're thinking about it all the time. And he says, thanks for calling. He says, would you tell people, honored, just honored is how we feel. To think that my dad's been gone almost a couple years, what FRYfest means to the family, and the fact that the state of Iowa and people thought so much of him, that this event that Josh and his crew from the CVB created, that we would have something celebrating Hayden while he was alive, but just to go on now. So he just said that they feel honored.
Well, and just so everyone here knows, it's not at one spot. Hayden is being honored tomorrow at the season opener for North Texas as Hayden Fry Day for them. So he obviously had a big impact there. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I remember the day he was officially announced as Iowa coach in the press conference we had. I was down in Bump Elliott's office, and he came in, and it was snowing hard outside. And he came in his big overcoat, and he wasn't all laughs right then, because I said, Coach, sorry about the snow. I came here to win football games. I don't care about the snow. And that's, you know, I mean, he lightened up once he got to know everybody, but there's really nobody that was, despite that tough exterior and everything like that, there's not a person that was ever nicer to people, especially I think the people that he worked with. But now let's flip the coin. You were on the practice field with him. You worked with him directly. I want to ask these two, how was Hayden Fry when he got mad? I know a lot of times he didn't get mad at his players, but he made the assistant coaches get mad at them.
That's a great point. I'll never forget one game we were playing, and we didn't play particularly well in the first half, and it was a team that we probably should have been, as you mentioned earlier, should have been handling pretty well, and we weren't. And so we went up, we used to walk in we had to go in the other side of the stadium and walk up about 40 stairs to get up to the locker room. And we all got up there, and the defense was on the first section, and then the offense was on the back section. And we were sitting there kind of just decompressing, thinking about what was going on. And then the coaches had a room that was right in the middle of both the offense and defense. And it was literally, it wasn't curtains, but it was the thinnest plywood for the locker room. And Coach Fry went in there with all the coaches, and it was lively for about 3 minutes. I mean, it was colorful and lively. And then the players outside could hear everything, and we knew our turn was coming. And then after about 3 minutes of coaching there with the assistant coaches, the coaches came out, gathered us by positions, and it was all, here's what we need to do to fix it. And it was extremely professional. But to your point, Coach would yell at the coaches, but he wanted to yell at us, I think, because we were the ones that weren't playing very well. But he put on the coaches came out, they communicated with us, and it was a great memory, and it was exactly what you're talking about. That he always wanted us to play well and to play up to our full potential. And if we weren't, that's what frustrated him. We could lose the game, but if we were playing to our full potential, he loved us and loved the effort that we played. But if we weren't playing up to our full potential, even if we won the game, he would be disappointed by that. And we all knew that was the benchmark and the standard, was to always play your best, always prepare your best, and then to give your best effort each and every Saturday that we played. So that was one of my great memories of him as well.
Yeah. Don?
I have a story about Coach Fry that kind of puts that in perspective. Marv's right. If the players didn't play well, he wasn't upset with them. He's going to give the impression to the players that the coaches might or might not keep their job. And, of course, if you had a good relationship with your players, the players would take exception to that. That's not fair. Coach Patterson didn't drop that pass. So why should they?
He's not talking about me dropping passes, by the way.
That's true.
Somebody else, receiver or something.
That's true, but I do want to take you back. I'm curious, show of hands, how many of you were here in the fall of '79 in Kinnick? Okay, I'm going to talk about a specific game that first year. We were playing Purdue. Purdue at the time was ranked 15th. And you might recall back then they called it the Big Two and the Little Eight. But Purdue was really the third team in the Big Ten. There was Michigan, Ohio State, and then Purdue. So we knew it's going to be difficult to beat Michigan, Ohio State in year one. We got a better chance to beat Purdue, especially if we're playing here. Final score that day was 20-14. Here's what I remember after the game. We had a player that year by the name of Brad Reed. And probably there's not anybody that remembers Brad Reed, but he was our best receiver. Keith Chappelle was a close second in terms of productivity, but Brad Reed was our leading receiver. That day, Brad Reed played a great football game, but here's the question from the media. Realized we lost by 6, and at the end of the game, there was a ball that went off of Brad Reed's fingertips in the end zone for what would have been a tying touchdown. Of course, the PAT would have won the game. And some media guy made the mistake of saying, "Coach, can you believe Brad Reed dropped that ball at the end of the game?" Coach Fry correctly said, "Don't even bring up Brad Reed's name in a bad way, because we wouldn't have even been in the game were it not for Brad Reed." Brad Reed played a great football game. He sold out on that play. The ball was off his fingertips. That is not a drop. Marv knows that's not a drop. If you sell out and it's off your fingertips, it's not a drop. It's a ball that was simply that much too far. So I thought it was appropriate for sure for Coach Fry to staunchly defend his players with the media. He would do that. And he would defend us too at times. But he was even more likely to defend the players, because those players were like his own sons. That's how he thought of them.
Now, I want to ask Donnie, when you were in, because these are the things that I don't know either, when you were in your meetings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with Hayden, was he? How was Hayden like at that time? Did he just sit there and watch you guys go, or what was the interaction there? Did he get mad ever? Did he? How was he in meetings?
Our weekly schedule, you could almost predict exactly what you were doing on any given day of the week and any hour during that day, because we were very much routine based. So many of our meetings were strictly involved the offense working together, the defense working separate from the offense. And of course we had staff meetings with all coaches there, but few and far between. Usually it was more about logistical stuff, about about exactly how we're going to handle a particular travel situation that we might be into, something like that. But I do have one story in particular you'll find really interesting about Coach Fry as he interacts with the coaches. In this case, he was just interacting with me. It was a Friday afternoon, and this is in the 90s. The only reason I know it was in the 90s is because I was responsible for scripting the practice that day. And it happened to be Friday, the day before a game. Coach Fry comes in the conference room. I'm working. It's maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, anything I can help you with? And I said, no, Coach, I'm in good shape. I'm almost finished with the script for the practice today. Actually, a walkthrough, not a energetic practice at all. It's the day before the game. And he said, you got any regrets? Meaning, do I have any regrets about the plan we have in place for the game? And I said, yeah, Coach, matter of fact, I do. I've got one regret. He said, what's that? I said, we should have a play installed in for this game that we do not have. I simply ran out of time as far as getting the practice reps that it needs. And he said, well, what kind of play is it? And I said, well, it is an exotic. I bet a lot of you know what an exotic is. That's his name for a trick play, right? So he said, well, why don't you show me on the board what you're talking about? So I got up on the board and I diagrammed it. And I said, Coach, I'm confident it'll work. We simply haven't practiced it, though. So it's not realistic that we can run it on game day. And he said, well, can we walk through it this afternoon? This is on Friday afternoon before the Saturday game. I said, yeah, we can walk through it if you want to. And he said, well, we got a pretty experienced offense. Let's walk through it. If we're convinced that everybody knows precisely what to do, we may run it anyway. The next day it was our biggest gainer, and we never practiced to play full speed, not once. The next day it was worth 55 yards, and it's a play that we never practiced in practice. So to all those coaches out there that say, trick plays require too much practice time, the answer is no, they don't. Matter of fact, in extreme cases, they don't require any practice time at all. Now, that was an extreme example, but that did happen. And I've got a few other stories I want to share before the hour's out, but that's one I had on my list.
No, that's fine. So did you get the feeling, did he have I'm going to do it this way, or did he listen to his assistants as far as what they...
The thing I always told young assistants when they came in, new assistant coaches, I said, know this about Coach Fry. Do not take a stand in the conference room in the presence of other coaches, because you're gonna go down in flames if you try that. If you really want to get your point across to Coach Fry, go in and knock on that door and go into his office and talk to him man to man. That's how you get things done. And that was always the case. So if I had a point I was trying to make in preparation for a game, I wouldn't bring it up in a staff meeting. I'd see him one-on-one.
Now I want to bring up something to get Dale involved in this a little bit in the marketing. You came, what, about 3 years after the Tiger Hawk? 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, no, the Tiger Hawk, well, Tiger Hawk, that came year 2, or didn't it, I believe?
About 1980.
So it was established when I came here, yeah.
You remember the guy in Cedar Rapids that actually drew it up?
Yeah, Bill Colbert.
Bill Colbert did it, and anyway, he changed the whole face of the University of Iowa football, once that logo took off. How was he? Did he ever, do you have any interaction or dealings with him concerning the logo on how to market it or anything?
No, but it's interesting you ask about the Tiger Hawk. I get asked this all the time now, managing the university's trademarks. Actually, just like 3 days ago, I was talking to an individual, and when he learned what I did, he said, is it true, and I knew where this was going, you know, it always follows the same road, does Hayden get a piece of every time that something's sold? And that's not true. I mean, I heard it said that that Bump pretty much told him, you know, the university would say, you put it on our uniform, it's a university logo. So Hayden never received royalties or anything on the Tiger Hawk. And then the next question, which I always found this odd, is it true that the Tiger Hawk spells out Fry? And I don't know how goofed up you have to be to see an FRY in there, but you really have to imagine it, and it's not true. That's something, and then there's this third myth that if you turn it on its end one way or the other, it looks like Fred Flintstone or Barney Rubble or something. Not true. In fact, you'll find this interesting. I found this fascinating because some of you may recall we had Bill Colbert here a few years ago for a couple years, and he signed autographs. He's the one who did the Tiger Hawk, designed it, and Bill told me, who, by the way, went on to a remarkable advertising agency career as just, he worked on the Marlboro Man. He worked for a prestigious Chicago ad agency for a while. Bill told me that his inspiration for the Tiger Hawk, from a graphic design standpoint, he felt that the best logo he'd ever seen is the CBSI. Okay, everybody knows what the CBSI looks like. He said, so when I sat down to draw the Tiger Hawk, he says I started with the eye, and it was inspired by the CBSI, and I drew it out from there. So I will say this, that Hayden, you know, in the time that I've been in licensing, which is now 18 of my years, yeah, that'd be my math. In a business sense, I would, whenever Hayden's image was involved or his likeness, I always, out of courtesy, would call him and say, Hayden, are you okay with this? And his response was, Dale, I trust you. Whatever you want to do, if it's good for the university. And we would talk about things. I still do that with the family, work with that. He never wanted anything. He was always gracious for the university. He didn't want any royalties from the sale of his image. He wanted the university to receive those royalties. So, yeah, that's, and actually call out my new friend Matt Reisetter over here. I hope, Matt, there you are. Did I say your last name right? That's fine. Matt is what I'll call you. That's my most recent thing with the Fry family. Matt called me up. This bus was Hayden's bus that he rode to the games on, and from the hotel that Matt bought. Okay. And wanted to do a tribute to Hayden, so I called and worked with Hayden's children on this, and I was talking to Kelly earlier, and I said, Kelly, you got to see this bus. I'll take some pictures of it. And he really is looking forward to that. And I said, Kelly, how creepy would that be to you to be driving down the interstate and see an 8-foot image of your dad on a bus next to you? He laughed. So I still talk with the family about things that involve Hayden's, you know, in the vernacular of today, name, image, likeness.
Well, and as I've said, that staff that you see on the side of the bus is probably one of the greatest football staffs in college football history.
Yeah.
I don't think there's, with the exception of maybe Coach Patterson, but no, that is, when you look at that right there, and I said that earlier, Kirk Ferentz wouldn't be Kirk Ferentz if Hayden hadn't hired him. Barry Alvarez was a high school coach in Mason City when Hayden hired him. And you just go right down the line. There's Bobby Stoops in there. You got Donnie there as a great coach. Carl Jackson. Bill Snyder went on to be a Hall of Fame career. Del Miller is in there. Bernie Wyatt. It's just everybody on that staff was excellent. Now, Marv, I guess one question I want to ask you too is, Hayden came in and did something that everybody thought was impossible. Winning at Iowa. Iowa was the graveyard of coaches for 20 years. There's no question about that. What made him so special? What made him want you and other players to give more than they actually had for Hayden Fry?
That's a great question, and I guess it starts. I'm going to go back to my first year at Iowa. I was sitting in the back of the room. You know, we had 120 seats in the meeting room. I was 5 days in, and I was battered and bruised, to say the least. I mean, I was a quarterback in high school, and I made the transition to tight end, and I got pummeled my first couple months at Iowa. And I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm contemplating whether I'd made a bad decision or not. But Coach Fry, after one practice, got up and was talking to the team, and he was talking about, how much effort it takes and how, what it takes to be a winner. And he talked about what it took to be a winner all the time. And the message was just consistent over and over and over again, talking about the coaches, the way they had their meetings, the same way with practices and the same way we went about our business. And he was talking about that practice that we had that afternoon, the second one. We used to have 2-a-days. And he was talking about how disappointed he was with us because he saw us walking or he saw us not hustling. And in my mind, when he was talking to us for like 5 to 7 minutes about the day, I literally thought he was talking to me with everything that he was saying. And I was like, he caught me that one time that I jogged back and I didn't sprint back. I mean, that was my mindset, that he truly was speaking to me every time he was talking to 120 people. And I think that was his greatest strength. And then other things, he would have people during the first part of camp, he would have anybody that wanted to talk about what Iowa football meant to them and what winning meant to them. And inevitably you'd have a fifth-year senior get up there and talk, you'd have a true freshman get up there and talk, and they would all have these different stories. And it was all about winning and what it meant to be a Hawkeye. And so that 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 14 minutes that we had every night during training camp was probably one of the greatest things we did as a team, because you really got to know your teammate. You really got to know the guy next to you in a way that you possibly couldn't if he hadn't got up there and talked about something that was so important to him. And then after every practice, we'd have a cheer. It was called a cheer. He literally called it a cheer. And so you'd spend 2 hours pounding on each other, getting after it, and then he would talk for a couple minutes, and then he'd always open it up to one guy could do a cheer. And sometimes it was a motivational speech by a player, sometimes it was a joke, other times it was all kinds of different things, but it was a way to finish the practice in a positive way, in a way to finish the practice by giving it back to the team. Basically is what he was doing, is giving that day back to the team to talk about what had just happened. And if you indulge me, so later in my career, one of the players got up and gave a really colorful talk. Really colorful, okay? You know what I'm talking about, colorful? And spit was flying, and it was intense. There was a lot of things covered, and so it was just kind of ended the meeting, but then we went out to practice, and we had a 2-hour practice, and I took, at the end of practice, I wanted to do the cheers, so I took my helmet off, and for those who don't remember, I was missing my front tooth. And I had a kind of a mullet with a spiked hair, so my hair was all messed up, and I'm missing my front tooth. And I told a joke about a wide-mouthed frog. You guys ever heard the joke about the wide-mouthed frog eating flies, and the snake wanted to know what the wide-mouthed frog was doing? And the snake ended up telling the wide-mouthed frog that he eats snakes. And the wide-mouthed frog, who talked like this a lot, ended up saying, "Not me, wasn't me." That is a stupid, corny joke, right? Stupid. But 85 guys fell over laughing, and Coach Brazier was one of the coaches that actually fell over laughing, because it was just, that was the kind of setting that Coach Fry would give us, and the freedom that he would give us to own the team and to be part of the team. And I need you guys to know that I truly, truly love him. And I would never have been able to accomplish anything after my high school to the extent that I did because of him. I mean, he gave me an opportunity to pursue my dream and my passion to be a student athlete at the University of Iowa. And for that, I'm forever, ever grateful. And the other thing I want you to understand is he had a huge impact on my life. And I want him to know that, and I know he knows that. But then I went on and became a high school coach. And literally, he's having an impact on another 160 kids because of the lessons and the values that he taught me about being a man, being a mentor, being a teacher, being a student, And so, I mean, it's mind-blowing to understand the kind of impact he has had on not just the game of football, but so many different families' life across the state of Iowa. So when I got offered to do this deal, man, I was like, whatever, let's do it for 3 hours, because I'm going to tell you what, the guy is unbelievable. He is everything you want him to be. he is 3 times better than even that, and I'm forever indebted to him.
Well,
Marv, I just was going to add on to something there. Yeah, you love Hayden. If you get to know him, you love him. The privileged times that I got to spend with him, where I'd sit in his home with him, rarely did we have a conversation that wasn't interrupted by these things, and we all have our lives interrupted with that. And I would listen to Hayden, you know, and he would say, you know, hey, can I call you back? I've got a friend here, and I love you. Every single conversation, he would tell people that he loved him. I heard it, I felt it from him, and what you're talking about there is he's had a generational impact, made an investment through a coaching career and multiple coaching careers, right, that are living through generations, and Marv passed it on to another generation in his coaching experience.
I have a story I'd like to share about Coach Fry that really gives you some insight into the kind of person he really is. So I got to take you out into to a little 2-lane road out in the state of Wisconsin. I recruited the state of Wisconsin back in the day, and Coach Fry was with me. And if you have the head coach with you, he's going to be with you one day to get a lot of things accomplished. So I've got the day planned out to the nearest minute. This is like the invasion of Normandy, you know, there's nothing left to chance. And we're on schedule, and part of the schedule involved stopping to buy gas, but we had enough time to buy gas before the next school visit. So I pull into the convenience store, and Coach Fry says, I'm going to go in and buy a pack of gum. Is there anything you need from the store? And I said, no, Coach, I'm good. So I fill up the car, and I sit back in the car, and I'm looking inside the convenience store, and it's Coach Fry and one young man that's the convenience store clerk. He's probably early 20s, I guess, young. And they're talking, and they're talking, and they're talking. I'm looking at my watch, and I'm doing a slow burn, you know, because I'm thinking we were on schedule until you had to talk to that convenience store clerk. And now we're off schedule. And anybody that knows me, from my background in the military, I'm never off schedule. That's not my nature. So by the time Coach Fry sits down in the car, he knows even though I didn't show it, he knows I'm irritated. That's one way to put it. And he's the one that starts the conversation. He gets in the car, we start to drive, and he said, Donnie, I know we're off schedule now, and it's my fault, and I apologize for what happened, that I put us off schedule. But that young man recognized me for being the coach at Iowa, and I was not about to ruin that interaction for him. I wasn't going to disappoint him. I was going to listen to his story about when he played high school ball and what he did, and he knew somebody that played for the Badgers, whatever. You know, he always had the time, and these guys have seen him in that same situation. He always made time for anyone and everyone. And a lot of you are aware of that too, because you spent time talking to him. He was a giver, not a taker. He was the most kind-hearted man you'll ever find. And that's my favorite story about Coach Fry, for the kind of person he really is.
Well, I think all of us know that Hayden was he was one of a kind, and as I said earlier in the earlier panel, the Iowa football, Iowa athletics, and the University of Iowa, and probably the state of Iowa, are a lot different because he came to Iowa in 1979, and a special person. He never let facts stand in the way of a good story. You know, till the day I think you'll all agree, till the day he died, he'll still maintain that the day we beat Michigan in 1-2, because he always told people, he says, you know, down in the bottom of that pile is Phil Haddy. And I wasn't even close to that pile. I told him a number of times I was waiting in the tunnel. I'd been around enough celebrations. I didn't want to get hit in the jaw or anything like that. But he always, that's Phil Haddy at the bottom of that pile with Rob Houtland and everybody. And I was waiting in the tunnel, in that old northeast tunnel in Iowa. But and he told a lot of stories about politicians and that. Some were true and some weren't. But And I think you all know he told, to all of us anyway, the same jokes 100 times over, and knowing Hayden Fry, you had to laugh every time. You know, you had to out of respect for him. So anyway, that was him, and we're all the better person because of him. Dale, you had something?
Well, yes, you all knew what was coming. The punchline, you hear it 1,000 times is a major understatement. But truthfully, I laughed at every one of them. I mean, it was funny to me every single time he'd tell me the same jokes. I will say this, and I apologize to anybody here that through all these FRYfests, I learned really fast when Hayden started coming to these FRYfests how incredibly difficult it is to get him from point A to point B, and it didn't matter if it was 6 feet or 600 yards. Everybody has a story with Hayden. And so I may have brushed by some of you because you wanted to share that moment, but we could not get him. We had to sneak him through the back hallways here. I remember a time that the vendors were setting up here the night before, and there used to be an employee that worked at the Marriott here that she had memories with Hayden, and she would stop us there, and we could not get past her. And I remember opening that door, and she wasn't working, thank God. And so started coming down this hallway, and one of these doors was open 6 inches, you know, and I glanced through that opening and made eye contact across this floor with someone who was a vendor, and they saw and they knew, and I could see them moving, and I'm trying to move Hayden because I knew they were coming for him. And we were about to make the turn to the service elevator, and we hear, Coach Fry, Coach Fry. And Hayden turns around, right? I mean, he's not going to walk away from any. And that individual said, Coach Fry, I just want to tell you, you've made me a lot of money over the years. Right? That's the coolest thing to say. And I said, I won't say that. Not now. Okay, we've got it. And Hayden exchanged pleasantries with him, and we're going down the hallway and get on the elevator, don't say anything, and the elevator door closes, and Hayden says, I sure wish that fella'd send me a check for all that money, which was one of his lines, that send me a check. So yeah, he knew everybody. Anybody who ever met Hayden felt a connection, and it was a real connection. There wasn't anything artificial about him. But to move him from the front door of the Marriott to the elevator, impossible without getting stopped by everybody.
And I think a lot of you know this, or maybe when he started at the University of Iowa with all of his extras for doing TV shows and everything, I think his salary starting, I'm pretty sure I know, was about like $49,000. Now, they're making a little bit more nowadays, but $49,000, and he says, I guess I was just born in the wrong century.
Phil, that might be a lie, because he always told me 40.
Right? I think so, well, with the TV shows and
maybe he made 49, but he told me always 40.
I know it, but he could stretch the truth, but the thing I will always, personally, till my last breath, the thing I'll take with me about Hayden Fry is he made me feel, as a sports information director and assistant director through the years, like my job was integral in his success. And he made me feel important. He made me feel what I did was important, even though I knew it had very little to do with his success. But he made me feel good about what I did, and he made me feel important. And for that, you can't replace the respect, you know, that he had for me, and I'll take that to my grave. That I said it before. People like Bump Elliott, Hayden Fry, my father, the influences they had on my life will forever be stuck with me. And now I'd like to ask you three, what's the one single thing you will take in your memory about Hayden Fry that'll stick with you to your last days? Dale, go ahead.
That's the impossible question. I mean, it really is.
It's a tough question.
It's a tough question.
Because
I mean,
he did so many good things.
It's, I mean, a man who truly loved people. I mean, it was genuine. He made instant connections with people. And I think, Phil, I mean, you worked there a long time. I've worked there a long time. Arguably, I mean, he would give a graduate level or PhD level class to how to make our constituency, the Hawkeye fans, feel like there was a connection. I mean, to go out in the terms of fundraising, selling tickets, representing the university, every single person that Hayden made a connection with, he made a connection in the moment with. And do we have time? I got an illustration for that maybe. I just popped into my mind. So this was even before I got to know Hayden really well, but I'll always remember this. How many people, when Hayden retired, went to his book signing when his book came out? Okay, so at that time I was running the Hawk Shop. Hayden was supposed to sign his book from 6 to 8 p.m. at Carver Hawkeye Arena. At 6 o'clock, there was a line halfway around Carver Hawkeye Arena. And there was no way these people were going to get their books signed. He signed his last book at midnight, never took a break. I spent the whole 6 hours basically working the line and telling people Hayden's going to only be signing his book because people had it was like bringing gifts before the king. People were carrying things to have him sign, but also to give him, just gifts. And so it was an exhausting, repetitive 6 hours as I was breaking people's hearts in line that I was, they're carrying a football helmet, a football, whatever, to have him sign. And I'm telling him, I'm sorry, but look at the line. Not everybody can have everything signed. And I came across this one elderly gentleman way back in the line, several hours into this, and he had a big garbage bag. And I thought, he was with an elderly woman who I presumed it was his wife. And I've got to go tell this poor person that he can't have this signed. As you can imagine, a lot of people were not happy with me. And he said to me, he says, oh, no, I don't want this signed. I want to give this to Hayden. And I said, well, what do you have there? And he said, well, my brother was a wood carver. And he loved Coach Fry. And so he carved a Hayden Fry carving. And it was big. It was a big garbage bag. And he opens this up. And I'm telling you, I couldn't see Hayden in this carving, okay? It was not good. He says, my brother never had an ounce of training, and he did this. Of course, I lied to him, and I said, that's beautiful, and I think that's really nice. And he said, my brother passed away. I want to give this to Coach Fry as a gift for my brother. He meant so much to my brother. So I kept my eye on this guy because I wanted to be there when he gave it to Hayden. And Hayden, so sometime later he gets up there, and George Wine, Phil's predecessor, was there signing the books. And he says, Coach Fry, he says, my brother loved you, and my brother never had any training, and he made this for you, and he would have wanted you to have this. And he put it up on the table, and behind Hayden there was gifts, just mounds of gifts. And he unwraps that thing, and he says, no training. You don't, none whatsoever. That's beautiful. And he went on, and that person felt, I mean, he was so happy. And I'm totally convinced that Hayden's either blind or what, because it looked nothing like him. But I was convinced that Hayden loved this thing. And so midnight comes by. My staff, who had been working the whole time, Hayden takes a picture with them, signs a book for all of them, and I get on the elevator at Carver to take all of Hayden's bounty that he had received. And we're on the elevator, and I'm holding this chunk of wood. And Hayden's slumped against the wall, and he turns to George, and he says, "George, how many of these book signings do we have to do yet?" This is the first one. And George says, "Well, we got Barnes and Noble here." He's like, "Oh," he said, "I don't know if I want to do all those." And he says, looks at me, and I can tell he's looking at that wood, and he says, "That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life." And I said, "You don't think Shirley's going to want to hang that over the mantle?" And he says, "I'm going to get thrown out of the house if I bring that up and hang it in there." So he fooled me. I believed him. He made somebody's day. And they left, and they were happy. And he made connections with every single person that night for 6 hours.
That was Hayden. I remember going out, by the way, to his house. He had a home near Lake McBride early in his career, and that was just shortly after I think he married Shirley. And they're taking us around, showing us the house. And in his bedroom, at the foot of his bed on the wall, is like a 3 by 4 foot picture of himself. You know, dressed in the Iowa gear. And I asked him if you had to say a prayer to that every night, and he didn't answer. But Donnie, go ahead.
You know, there's so many things that Coach Fry gave to me, but in a practical sense, the thing that comes to mind for me is, of course, you know, he's a psychology major, and that would be the psychology behind motivation, the psychology, you know, what to say at any particular time, what to do at any particular time. I thought, having been graduated from West Point, I thought I knew a lot about leadership and motivation already, but I learned even more from Coach Fry. Let me give you a specific example. 1990, as you recall, was a Rose Bowl season. It was another unexpected Rose Bowl appearance. And we lost a lot of good players in 1990, so let's fast forward to 1991. We had some good players back, but we had some significant losses too. And as you know, that 91 season was an even better season record-wise. We were 10-1, we had a loss to Michigan, and then of course off to the Holiday Bowl for a tie with BYU. But the thing that comes to mind for me was after that season was over, Coach Fry in a staff meeting said kind of matter-of-factly to the coaches, just reflecting back on the season, he said, "You know, man, looking back, the smartest thing we did is we never told them that they weren't that good." And there's a lot of truth to that. His philosophy was also always, you build them up, you don't tear them down. A lot of young coaches have asked me, as they take on head coaching responsibilities, "Do you have any advice for me?" And I would always tell them, here's the advice that Coach Fry gave to us. It's good advice for you too. You build them up, you don't tear them down. Your goal is to become a great coach. And here's my definition of great coaching. Great coaching is inspiring those players to play better than what they could even imagine. Marv knows exactly what I'm talking about, because Marv got that done sometimes at Regina also. It's a great feeling when you do it as a coach. That's always your pursuit, but it's hard to have the feeling that you actually were able to put your players in position where they played better than they could possibly imagine. We got it done under Coach Fry's leadership. Marv got it done at Regina. I got it done quite a bit over at Western Illinois also. So that's the gift that Coach Fry has given to all of us assistants, is an understanding of how to properly motivate and how to inspire young men.
So I apologize for telling, this is all crystal clear in my mind. And so when I was a freshman, I'm going to talk about the Tiger Hawk a little bit, and I'm going to talk about other things about Coach Fry, but when I was a freshman, trying to make it, just trying to figure out what I was doing at Iowa and how to get by. And the first game they played that year was in Hawaii. So they traveled out with the travel squad, or 60, 65 guys, and they, came back from that game, and they all had Tiger Hawks on their helmet. And if you didn't dress, you didn't get the Tiger Hawk on your helmet. So I was practicing with 35 guys with no Tiger Hawk for another week. I think we played the next week. I didn't dress. Another 20 guys got to dress. So now like 85 guys had the Tiger Hawk on their helmet. and 20 of us didn't have the Tiger Hawk on the helmet. So then they played a road game, I think, and then the week 4, I think, we came back and I saw I was going to be dressing. And so earlier in the week, I was sitting down, cutting the tape off, kind of frustrated about not dressing yet. You know, I mean, that's things you don't think about when you're fans, and there's 120 guys, but only 80 guys get a dress. 40 guys got to get told no, right? So I'm sitting there during the week kind of frustrated about things, cutting my tape off, and Coach Fry walks by me and he's like, hey, how's things in West Liberty? And now this really set me off because I was from West Branch, right? And I took a little offense to it. So I kind of, you know, as I was getting up, gathering my stuff, you could kind of tell I was down. And he's like, I know, Marv, I know. And he kind of chuckled, and then he gave me a hug. And so the only reason I'm bringing that up is let's go 4 years later. Let's go to Columbus, Ohio in 1987, and let's do something that Iowa football hadn't done in a long time and win a game. And Coach Fry came in, and that hug that he gave me in the locker room after that game was the same feeling for me being in that game, that setting, than it was when I hadn't even dressed yet. And he always had that ability to make me feel that way. But that first time I did dress, we got in, the bus dropped us off up by the hospitals. We walked down into the locker room. And I walked back there, and there it was. I can actually see where my locker was. The shower was right here. Of course, they stick me back by the shower, the young guy. But man, there was like religious light shining on this helmet. And there's that Tiger Hawk helmet, I swear to God. And my jersey hanging in there with Cook on the back. And it was the greatest highlight I had in my first year at Iowa. Was I got to put that thing on, I got to go down those stairs, and I got to warm up for 30 minutes and then stand on the sideline for 3 hours. That's what I did. The best highlight I could ever ask for. But then after my senior year, Chuck Hartley and I and Dave Haight got invited to go to the Japan Bowl. So we flew to Japan and played the game, and Saturday night was the game. So Sunday we started to come home about Sunday at 6. We flew out of Japan. And we're flying, and we got connections got missed, and so we ended up having like 2 or 3 different connections. And Coach Fry and Mrs. Fry was on the flight with us. We went from a big plane to a small plane on the last leg from Chicago back to Cedar Rapids. We were on a really, really small plane. And Dave and I and Chuck were sitting in the back of this plane, and the stewardess came back with 3 Miller Lights. And our eligibility was all gone, so don't worry about it. But Coach Fry bought us some beers. It was like 6 p.m. Sunday in Iowa when we landed. It was 6 p.m. when we left Tokyo. And he was like, I really want to thank you guys for putting up with the flight and everything. But it was that first time that I saw him in a capacity other than coach for me. And then it came full circle at his funeral when his son got up and spoke. And he had all the former players stand up, players from North Texas, players from all the different schools that he'd coached at. And he gave a message, and the message was, to the gist of it, I tried to look it up, and I apologize, but the gist of it was how proud he was of us, and how he wanted us to, you know, how proud he was of us, how he wanted us to be winners, and if we weren't, start surrounding ourselves with winners, and that he loved us like we were one of his sons. And every single day that I played football at the University of Iowa, I felt that. I was blessed to play for him. I was blessed to play for his assistant coaches, and I also want to take the time to thank every one of you guys that's ever supported Iowa football, because your support, and I mentioned this to a group yesterday, anytime you support Iowa football, you help people like me pursue my dreams, and you lighten the path for those guys that are going to play tomorrow on Kinnick Stadium. And you're giving them a chance to go out and do what they want to do and pursue their education and pursue their athletic career. But it's the support of the fan base that is what made Iowa football so special over the years. I was talking about Indiana, right? Indiana's a good team, got a great program going. Iowa's been doing this for how long? Hey, 40 years, right? Iowa's been really, really good for 40 years. The support, even before Coach Fry was here, 60,000 people, 70,000 people in Kinnick Stadium when they were 3-8. We are truly blessed to to live in the state of Iowa and to be part of Iowa football. So I am forever grateful that you guys let me be a part of this panel. And I love him. And everybody should love this man because he is an incredible human being. Thank you.
I remember when he said one of the reasons he came to Iowa, they were looking at highlight films of Iowa, and he says, look at that. The stadium's almost full. They've hardly won a game that season. He says the fans are cheering when they get a first down. Just think what will happen if we score a touchdown. And that's the way he was. And I truly thank you all for all your memories, that we're all better people. And we're all at a better university in a better state. We didn't know this 40 years ago, but because of Hayden Fry, thank God he came to Iowa and gave us all what he... You know, you get a little emotional. He was a great man, and fortunately I was able to work for him for his entire career at Iowa, and we're all blessed because of him, and that's why we're at FRYfest. So have a good time, and we're going to remember him forever. Thank you all. Thanks to Dale Arens, Don Patterson, and Marv Cook. And I hope your coaching career isn't done the way you're talking today. Thank you all.